Hi, I'm Flint Dilley, and I was executive story consultant on the Transformer movie, and was a producer on the show, and a story editor, and a writer, and did a lot of Transformer stuff in my day.
I'm Nelson Shen. I was working as a director for this movie.
Hi, I'm Susan Blue, and I played RC in the movie Transformers.
I'm Tom Griffin, one of the producers of Transformers, the movie, with my partner, Joe Bacall.
Okay, I'm Joe Bacall. I'm also one of the producers with Tom. And I was creative director of Assemble Productions. Tom was the CEO. We've had a great ride together for almost 30 years, and we're still excited about all the things we're doing.
My favorite scene in the movie probably was Starscream kicking Megatron out of Astro Train. And that's probably because Starscream was my favorite character. I never really liked Megatron very much. And I always loved the dynamic between those two. So I just loved that he had his one moment where, you know, of delusional glory, you know, shortly before he got exterminated.
My favorite scene was the power transformation where Hot Rod becomes Rodimus Prime, and he has that jolt of power and heroic commitment and even a touch of maturity that we all like.
My favorite scene was one of the early scenes, was really when Optimus Prime arrives and transforms from the truck to do battle, which turns out to be his final battle against Megatron. But the rush of you've got the touch, you've got the power, as he's coming in on that truck and makes this transformation and then confronts Megatron, that's my favorite scene. My son Jay Bacall, who was actually a supervising producer on the film, he came up with the name Transformers. And we presented it to the client, and they liked it, you know, but that Steven had a question. He was worried initially that people would think that the Transformers, well, that was something that you had to plug into the wall, that a kid was going to be asked to plug this into the wall. And we said, no, no. They're going to think it's just what we want them to think, which is that it's something that changes from one form to another. And his team was really supportive of it, and finally said, okay, that's the name, let's roll, you know. So it was great. It was really exciting.
The Steven that we're talking about was Steve Hassenfeld. He was the leader of Hasbro in the early days. When we started working with Hasbro, it was a really small company.
I like the Megatron, gigantic guy, you know, Megatron. He turned into the smaller gun. Then Starscream, he grabs, you know, he's shooting at the Autobots. That's what we like, yeah.
Well, my favorite character of the Transformers is Optimus Prime.
And my favorite character was Blur.
Absolutely, positively, definitely. Nobody can get the job done faster than I can. Nobody.
John Machida played Blur. He was the fastest talking person in history, I believe, and you could still understand him. I always liked the idea that someone could talk that fast and you really could follow them, and so that was one I loved.
If I could be a Transformer, I think I would transform into...
Maybe one of an airplane, maybe?
Boy, I don't know. I transformed into a computer that worked or something like that.
Because I want to just overlook, you know, I mean, looking down, you know, somewhere.
A really souped-up car.
You know, a walking word processing unit or a game design machine or something.
A really souped-up car that didn't take any gasoline whatsoever.
It would be fun to be a Dinobot.
And I could go anywhere, you know, without any kind of fuel.
Yeah, just be really stupid and break stuff.
Yeah, but really pretty. Probably real pretty pink.
Some character maybe could make a difference in this world we live in, which is in difficult shape right now. I don't know.
That's a good answer. The music was different than animated films had done for the time. We did set out to set a different tone, because television series have a bed of music, and we had a great Transformers theme, which was loved and is, you know, still popular today. But we wanted to reach differently into a broader music arena.
Right, and that's why we wanted a rock group. Lion was an emerging rock group at that time. We wanted them to record the Transformers theme. And we had a really terrific, Bill Ring, a terrific music supervisor who was part of the Scotti Brothers company. They, you know, he was terrific in terms of he knew all these different people, Stan Bush, and who sang You've Got the Touch, You've Got the Power, and Dare, and everything like that. And so he knew all these people, and he had a good instinct for what the best song would be for different sections of the movie. But we wanted to broaden the audience, and that was really the key things Tom was saying. And we felt that having a rock score would do that.
As a woman, I can do a little kid's voice, and where guys grow up and their voices get lower. We kind of always just stay right here, you know, so I can do like a little boy, or I can do a little girl, or I'm kind of all over the place, you know. You can play, what's great is you can play a baby
and then an ancient person all in the same day.
Oh, I think she'd be incredibly strong, Mrs. Optimus Prime. She'd be very caring. She'd be very demanding. Be great. I'd love to play Mrs. Optimus Prime. If I was Mrs. Megatron, I think she'd be in here, and she'd be a little more gravelly, you know, and a little bit more with a bite, a little more sinister. I think my favorite part of voice acting as a career is the actual sessions, you know.
We recorded a lot of times differently than they're used to doing cartoons, in that we do things in ensemble.
It's wonderful to go into an ensemble cast and you've got 5 people on your left who are geniuses and 5 people on your right who are geniuses that can do anything with their voices.
And they had a thing called perfect pause in those days, and that was you put a second between every line of dialogue.
You know, it's fun to watch somebody like Frank Welker play off of somebody like Michael Bell, to play off of somebody like Peter Cullen.
But in that second, they wouldn't have to animate anything. So if you take every line of dialogue in the show, you'd save a minute or 2 minutes per show of animation. And, you know, it's kind of like this scam. I don't know who invented it, but the minute you got rid of perfect pause, the shows just started to come alive, and it felt like it felt like more of a real theatrical production.
I remember we were doing a session, and this one guy went, "Yeah, come on!" And we heard this, like, rip, and his pants had ripped because he did this huge kind of walla sound, you know, especially when you're fighting. Ha! 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 You know, and all of a sudden we hear this cloth rip, and it was one of the actors whose pants had ripped in the session. Well, we were like laughing, crawling out of the booth. We were laughing so hard, and the poor guy, you know, it was great.
You know, it was groundbreaking to introduce these famous actors in an animated feature, because at that time, mostly not famous, but good actors were voicing the different animated characters in feature films. But we wanted, again, to have a point of difference, you know, to really step up. And we thought that would, in addition to having the voice actors, the terrific voice actors like Peter Cullen and Frank Welker, do the characters that they had been doing on the TV show. For the new characters we were creating, we wanted to have some stars. The expletive, let's talk about that for a second, right? The expletive in the film, when Spike, in a moment of panic, in the midst of this battle, yells out, "Oh shit!" Yeah, that was in the script. That was in the script. It wasn't ad-libbed or anything like that, because he wasn't in any panic in the recording studio. And and there was a big controversy about that. There was such a big controversy that, in fact, when the VHS came out, they took it out. And then I think somebody prevailed, some more level head prevailed, and said, don't do that. Come on, the world is changing. Just put it back. And of course, it went back into the DVD, and I'm sure it's in this version that's been remastered, because it makes sense. I mean, that's a moment of panic. That's not going to shock anybody in the world.
It was also in, though, to make it clear that our rating level would not be a G, which would limit our audience, would cut back on the number of people who at that time would go to see an animated film, and just raise it that little bit a notch. And in that sense, it was probably one of the many decisions, like the music and like the casting, that we made to try to elevate the broad age appeal of the film.
And I think that it definitely was, because the G.I. Joe film was initially finished, or almost finished, was certainly at rough cut stage, with Duke dying. And then there was a big discussion, a big meeting about it, and a feeling after all the letters and from parents and everything like that, that Duke should live. And so, but we'd already done all the animation. So you can see, when you see the G.I. Joe movie, everybody is around, and all of a sudden the call comes in on a walkie-talkie. Yes, yes, Duke's alive. He's recovered. He's come out of his coma.
So yeah, the writers, there was just this constant churn of stuff. And what was really funny is things would bleed from G.I. Joe into Transformers. Like there's a woman, I think her name's Marissa Fairborn, who is Flint and Lady J's daughter, turns up in, I think in Five Faces of Darkness, which is a Transformers. There was Hector Ramirez, who was kind of our a character who would show up in, would show up in all of our different shows. He'd always be the news guy.
Yes, we're a little surprised, but not surprised at the same time. I mean, the thing is, we said it in the future, 2005. Now this is 2006. So in a sense, we obviously weren't thinking about that it was going to last and become a big cult success or anything like that. We were just trying to do the best film we could with the story we had to tell. So I don't think that we were thinking about that. So I think
the fact that
thrilled actually.
The fact that Transformers has had a long life is not really a surprise to us, I don't think, although you step back and think it's been 20 years and you say, wow. But at the heart of Transformers is empowerment to children and control of their world, learning about their world, fantasy, play, good versus evil, mastery, and all those are really classic story, adventure elements that are part of growing up and part of being a child and part of becoming a responsible adult. And so I think that the heart of Transformers is probably going to be around forever.
No. I cannot sing the theme song to Transformers.
Transformer.
More than meets the eye.
Transformer.
Robots in disguise.
That was the one thing that they all remembered, it was robots in disguise, and of course it was the heart of what the concept was. So.
We had some really great people doing the voices in the show, and many of them carried on to the movie. Start with Frank Welker playing Megatron.
Nobody summons Megatron.
I love the characters that Frank Welker portrayed, all of his crazy, zany characters. I loved his Megatron.
More than you imagine, Optimus Prime.
But then he would create these other characters that were just zany and wonderful, and they were vocally so much fun.
Really safe, I'm friends today.
Hey, nobody calls Soundwave uncharismatic. Yeah, let's kick tailgate.
I like those characters too.
Nobody really gets to see unless you're in the recording studios. He was a guy with just a unique gift.
This was almost too easy, Starscream.
Our character sides were things like, okay, we've got Blendo, and he's a blender that transforms into a plane. So we're going to want a sound effects, a little bit plane engine, and a little bit blender, and then let's put some bubbles in there, like there's some water in the blender, and Frank Welker would come up and
Yeah, destroy Unicron, eliminate even the toughest brains.
and then you had as Peter Cullen played Optimus Prime.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
I mean, that voice just defined that character.
Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost.
We always thought of Optimus Prime as kind of a John Wayne kind of a character.
I thought you were made of sterner stuff.
He was just your solid, sturdy guy, and you couldn't imagine that character without that voice.
Now, all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck.
And you had, on the other end of the spectrum, you had guys like Chris Latta, who was Starscream, who was a stand-up comedian. He wasn't a guy who, his whole career hadn't been coming in doing voices for cartoons. He was somebody, I think, somebody spotted in New York doing stand-up and said, this guy'd be great for our shows. And he brought a whole edge to the party.
Do I hear a second on that?
psychotic street edge to the performance. They added something to it. Somehow that stuff and sort of everybody reacting to this, this edgy energy in the room shows up on the screen.
You're an idiot, Starscream.
But for the movie itself, they wanted a certain amount of marquee value, so you had people who were not regular characters in the movie. You had, Judd Nelson, who was very hot at the time.
If you're gonna ride, Dano, ride in style.
Yeah, I remember when Judd Nelson came in, he was playing Hot Rod, Rodimus Prime. That was kind of fun because he was, huge. He was kind of a Brat Pack guy, and he was like this hot actor. He was sort of the hottest current actor that we had at the time.
Ba weep grana, weep ninny bong.
I did get to work with Judd Nelson. I did a scene with Judd.
I was afraid you'd be trapped outside the city.
Hey, I wasn't worried for a microsecond.
Acting is all about responding to what the other person is saying.
Then you probably didn't understand the situation.
That's when it's great, when you have somebody to play with.
And then there were guys like who were big stars who, I didn't really know who they were at the time. There was Lionel Stander, and then now you see the movies, and you go, wow, he played Cup. It was like years later I actually saw one of these movies. I said, oh, now I totally get that casting, and he did a great job as Cup.
Finish him off, Prime. Do it now.
Cup's this guy always referencing, everything reminds him of something that happened a long time ago.
This reminds me of the battle on Alpha 9. The Petro Rabbits were Gridlock, get your noodle out of my face.
Until you finally get to the scene where you realize he's never seen anything like this before, which is kind of a great moment in the movie.
Doesn't this remind you of anything, Cup?
Nope. Never seen anything like this before.
One of the most interesting people we recorded was Robert Stack, who did the voice of Ultra Magnus.
I got to work with Robert on some other projects throughout the years, and we used to talk about this movie, and he so enjoyed doing that role.
Prime, you said the Matrix would light our darkest hour.
So like the real Robert Stack was coming in to do a character, and that was kind of huge.
And Robert Stack, he's a remembered icon. He's a legend.
Now there was a guy who was a huge figure from my childhood because he was in a show called The Untouchables, and Robert Stack was Elliot Ness.
I loved the character in the movie, and I loved that Optimus Prime was able to pass the Matrix on to Ultra Magnus. I think that was my favorite scene in the whole movie. It was really touching, and a lot of the acting came out.
I'm just a soldier. I'm not worthy.
I didn't want to act like, some dweeby fan and all that. But we were sitting down talking to him. He was saying, I've never really done any of this voiceover stuff. And he was really kind of nervous about it. And I'm sitting there, I'm talking to Elliot Ness, and he's kind of nervous about this.
I can't deal with that now.
And we were just saying, just do it. I mean, you got a great voice, and you're going to be doing it. You're going to be playing Ultra Magnus. And we told him who Ultra Magnus was, and he does a great job. That's one of my favorite voices in the whole show.
Autobots, prepare to board the shuttles. This new menace is more dangerous than all the Decepticons put together. Somehow we must destroy it.
The irony of the whole thing is he became the host of a show called Unsolved Mysteries. And if you listen to the voiceover he did in that show, it's some of the creepiest voiceover I've ever heard. It was, he could take, a rather mundane murder case and turn it into, a search for the Loch Ness Monster. It was great. So hopefully we did something to help him on his voiceover career.
Come on, showtime's over. We've got work to do.
Leonard Nimoy was wonderful too. He's Mr. Spock on Star Trek. We all know that. So the thing is, though, he came in and he said, "Do you have a bathroom?" And we said, "Yes, it's right over there." And he went in and he did vocal scales for 20 minutes, and then he, just really getting his voice ready. And then he came out and he said, "Now I'm ready."
I will rip open Ultra Magnus and every other Autobot until the Matrix has been destroyed.
I remember the day Orson Welles came in.
I am Unicron.
We decide, Unicron. We use Orson Welles.
There was this famous audio tape of Orson Welles just reaming some sound engineer, and this was this fear object for every voice recording producer and animator. So Yeah, and this guy you know, Orson Welles just ripped this guy up one side and down the other, and you think, oh man, I'm going to be in the room with that guy.
And I asked him, I said, well, tell me, Orson, how do you feel about the fact that this tape has gone around the industry? He said, I rather like it. It intimidates people before I arrive.
Excellent.
So Orson Welles comes in.
He was a little bit late, you know.
I mean, he was a huge guy. I mean, he was, you know, I'm 6'5", and he was probably about the same height as I was, but he weighed like 450 pounds by the time, you know, we got him.
You exaggerate.
You know, he came in and he said, I understand I'm playing a whole planet.
Then it pleases me to be the first.
But he was great. The whole thing that was interesting is we had the time where all the techs were doing the mics and all that. I remember we were talking about the Mercury Theater, and we were talking about his character, and he thought it was, I think, kind of fascinating that, you know, I'm playing a giant planet.
Perhaps I misjudged you.
Then when he read his line, oh no! Right away, I don't think I can use that.
What a fool!
Obviously, he's just not in really great health. He was in a wheelchair when he came in, but he could sort of walk over to the recording thing.
His voice is like, almost like, how are we going to use, his voice?
And you sort of hear him wheezing a little bit.
Then we put synthesizer, make his voices make gigantic and strong.
This is my command. You are to destroy the Autobot matrix of leadership. It is the one thing, the only thing that can stand in my way.
It's not that we're 100% his voice, but we pretty much made his voice good, you know?
Proceed on your way to oblivion.
Then really sorry, this is after 2-3 months he passed away. You know, I mean, this is the last, this is the last of his voice on Transformers.
Destiny, you cannot destroy my destiny.
I'll show up at game conventions and, Comic-Con and BotCon and things like that. And I'll get somebody saying, how come you killed Optimus Prime?
When I first read the script,
I cried when you killed Optimus Prime.
I saw that Optimus Prime dies.
And it's like, well, I was young, acting under orders.
I was shocked. And I thought then that kids all over the world would be incredibly despondent over this.
But the real answer is that we didn't know that he was an icon.
Optimus, forgive me.
The reality is, at the time, when we thought of the show as it was a toy show. We just thought we were killing off the old product line, introducing the new products. And Optimus Prime was one of those guys.
We felt, and they felt, the time for a new generation of heroes. And so it was an opportunity to do something that had never been done before because nobody died on television.
We thought there was a chance to update the character, update the Transformer world, and let him fight the really great, strong, historic battle, which he fights in the film, that kids everywhere wanted to see and wanted to see what happened.
And then bring on a new hero. Hot Rod becomes Rodimus Prime. And so everybody was for that.
Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost.
We try to play that moment as human die. It's not just robotic die. You can feel the emotions, You can see humanity,
But then, of course, when the film came out, And there was this hue and cry from parents about, how could you kill off Optimus Prime? My kids are so upset and all of that. Then we thought, you know, I think maybe we went too far.
From my understanding, it had huge impacts. All of the children that I know and everything that loved Transformers and loved Optimus Prime were just overtaken with grief.
As I am directed, I'm not going to know what's the react from audience.
Yeah, kids were crying in the theaters. We were hearing about people leaving the movie. We're getting a lot of nasty notes about it. And indeed, we had some kid that locked himself in his bedroom for 2 weeks.
Do not grieve.
Nobody had the heart to tell him we already had an episode in the pipeline where Optimus comes back as a zombie and you kill him all over again.
Soon, I shall be one with the Matrix.
The kind of interesting coda to the Killing Optimus Prime story is the scene that never did make it into the Transformer movie. You know, next season we're going to have all these new characters and people are going to be wondering what happened to the old characters that they like so much. And what we knew in a business sense is, well, they'd been discontinued because they were the 84 line, but we got to tie them off. So we had this one scene where the Autobots basically had to run through a gauntlet of Decepticons, which just basically wiped out the entire 84 product line in one massive charge of the Light Brigade. So whoever wasn't discontinued like stumbled to the end. And yeah, that of course never made it into the movie. But if you think kids are locking themselves into the room over Optimus Prime, you know, basically in that scene they would have seen their entire toy, you know, collection wiped out. The funny thing about Killing Optimus Prime is it probably gave the movie its resonance.
To show someone dying and the leader dying, I think was a powerful thing, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's lasted as long as it has, because we did things that weren't being done at that time.
It was very pivotal for a child's growth and for the fans of Transformers.
There was a thought in my head that I'd be sitting here 20 years later talking about the Transformer movie.
And I think it followed them all through their life. It has mine.
I think in retrospect, we might not have killed Optimus Prime off if we had to do it all over again.